Welcome to Sam's Gun Sight. I had a question from a viewer about the amount of movement there was between the upper and lower receiver of the Sig Sauer MPX. So I wanted to take a look at that today, just go over what the cause of that is, and just so you understand a little bit more about how much you might expect to see. I'm just going to take the standard swab holder and push the push pins out. Standard field strip, really simple to do. Take a couple of measurements, hopefully this won't take too long. Okay, so you can see that the only thing that holds the upper receiver and the lower receiver in place are these two pins. These pins are detented here on the front and actually on the bottom on the back, so they'll hold in place and you won't lose them, which is nice. The only thing that puts the tension on the upper receiver when this is assembled is this detent right here that has a significant amount of force on it. It's a few pounds of force. It's once the upper receiver is in place, that detent pushes it up and holds it kind of flush. So any movement that you feel or hear between the upper and the lower receiver is where the upper receiver is rocking on that detent and on these two pins. Now I measured these two pins earlier, and these pins they are right at 0.2483, almost a perfect quarter of an inch in diameter. So that is 0.2483 inches in diameter, and it's consistent between both the front and the rear pin. So that's almost a quarter of an inch. So what I've done is I found a drill bit. It's a quarter-inch drill bit, but when I measure that, its diameter is 0.2488. It's 0.2488. So it's slightly larger than these pins. So then I'd look at these two holes that we have here, and the rear hole is got a lot of slop in it, and we'll look at that just a little bit later. The front hole doesn't have that much slop in it. There's not a whole lot. You can see how well that fits. So these pins are very close to the same size. There's only a couple of thousandths of an inch or less available movement between the front pin and the front bore that pin fits into. If you're going to have slop for assembly somewhere, that's where you want it. You want it in the rear, not in the front. You want the front to be tight and the rear to have the adjustment for the pin to find its place. So I'm going to set the lower receiver aside, and again, when I measured this hole diameter here, these came out to be around 265 thousandths in this direction, and let's see if I can get a decent measurement on it here. And about 249 thousandths in the other direction. So this hole is purposely oblonged so this rear pin can find its home, and it'll be reasonably easy to assemble. The front hole itself isn't very oblong at all. Let me see if I can. That's about 249 thousandths, and I measured that earlier, and that's consistent in both directions. The last thing I want to do is I want to put a stack up here. I have some holders in place. Yeah, you guys will recognize the holders. Yeah, couldn't find anything better than a $100 stack of ammo for holders. Okay, so when I put the the upper receiver on a platform, I might just flip that over, it might be easier to see. Take a light, and I put this 1/4 inch pin in, and you can see there how much room that is and how much slop that is. There's quite a bit, and contrary to that, when you put that 1/4" pin, I'll kind of move this down so hopefully it's in the center of the camera view. Having a little trouble with my flashlight here. You can see there's no light. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go turn the the top light off, so we'll take a closer look at it. Okay, so I've got the light shut off. I'm gonna hold the bottom of this pin flush to the bottom of the hole, and then I'm just gonna press it in with the flashlight. And you can really see there's not much, if any, room between that pin, that 1/4" drill bit shank, and the upper receiver bore. If I go to the rear, move this over here, do the same thing, you can really see there's a lot of room in there. You can see a lot of light in between that. So that's the slop where they have to allow for the tolerances within the machining of the upper and lower receiver, so those two pins will line up. They decided just to make that hole oblong. Now, if you'll notice, the hole is oblong, but it isn't from the top to bottom. It's still pretty close to the 1/4 inch, and that's adjustable because of the detent that's down below it. And you can see where the detent, which is here again, right below the center of that pin, which makes perfect sense on where it should be, and where it hits right here. So when you press this together, get my stands out of the way. When you reassemble this front pin, and there's not a tremendous amount of movement there for the first pin, and then you come in and you do the rear pin, and that's an easy assembly. So when you look at this and you go, well, there's a lot of slop in between my upper and lower receiver on this, is this right? For the one that I have, this is how much it is, and you can see that there's not a whole lot of room in this parting line here. That doesn't change a tremendous amount. But the question is if you shake it, what does it sound like? Now, I don't know if that's the actual I'm going to hold the bolt so I know that the bolt isn't moving. So there is some movement, but as you can see, not a tremendous amount. And the reality is when you're shooting it, you can feel it rock a little bit, but that really doesn't affect your aim. I mean, obviously all your aiming comes from the straightness of the upper receiver with the barrel, which, as you've seen, that's one piece, that's one assembly, and it certainly doesn't affect the feeding. But anyway, I just wanted to address that issue with the Sig Sauer MPX P. Again, Sam's Gun Sight, SAMSGUNSIGHT.com. Thanks for watching. Hope you found it informative.